Welcome again. Sorry for the delay, the long delay, but everything is delayed today, so we have to cope with that. So welcome to the session on working with indicators for climate resilience and sustainable urban food systems. So we have a large number of panelists today, so I will start calling Cécile Michel from the MUFPP Secretariat. Then I will call Joy Carey from RUAF. I will call Winfred Katumo from Nairobi City County, sorry. Sam Ikwa from Mazingira Institute, Nairobi. Please take your seat. And finally, Alexandra Rodriguez from Conquito. Okay. So I will now leave the floor to Cécile to make the introductory remarks.
All right. Welcome, everybody. I am delighted to be here today to open this very important session titled, as Guido said, Working with Indicators for Climate Resilient and Sustainable Urban Food System. It is organized by RUAF Foundation, the FAO, and the MUFPP Secretariat. So am I able to, how can I? Okay, great. So at the end of this 1 hour and a half session, we hope that you will be more confident to start using the MUFPP indicator framework, to have a better understanding of the origin, the purpose, the design, the interconnection between the MUFPP monitoring framework, the Green City Initiative, and the city region food system indicators. But also to have more clarity on how to connect the MUFPP monitoring framework with other compatible frameworks. So the MUFPP, as you now know, it's a network of 250 cities all around the world that are committed to develop more sustainable urban food system. How do we do this? Well, simply by offering cities 3 main tools and resources. The first one is the MUFPP Framework for Action, the set of 37 recommended actions that are clustered into 6 categories that you all know. Then we have the best practices from our cities that we collect through the Milan Impact Awards and serves as inspiration. And last but not least, we have the monitoring framework, which is a set of 44 indicators that have been developed by the RUAF Foundation, the FAO, and the MUFPP Secretariat, and of course, with the inputs and the participation of MUFPP cities through a participatory process started in 2016. So here you can see the chronology of the articulated process that led us till today, with all the different steps that we have been developed throughout these years. I believe that this is a fundamental tool for our community. More importantly, it has been requested by cities and co-designed with cities, and it is currently used by many of them. We truly believe of the importance of this tool for monitoring the processes made in implementing the MUFPP Framework for Action, so all the different actions, for facilitating the design of policies and for communicating and sharing experiences and lessons learned. Moreover, a methodological guide have been developed on how to use each of the 44 indicators. This methodological guide contains detailed information on the rationale for the selection of the indicators, how they have been constructed, a useful glossary for technical terms, but also an explanation on the type of data required, how they can be collected, and also the resources and expertise at the city level that are required to use them. So we would like to encourage more cities to use it, because it has been built for cities, and it is a tool that it is tailor-made on our framework for action. And this is what this session is about, and I am sure that by the end of this session you will be more inspired and confident in using it. So I wish you a fruitful meeting, and I leave the floor to Joy and Guido. Thank you.
Thank you, Cécile. Thank you very much for the overview. I think it is always important to remember the chronology and the steps that have led to create the framework for the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact. I would like to now move into another short presentation. I don't know. Yes. It's an introduction of the Green Cities Initiative. That is a new initiative that was launched in 2020 by the FAO Director General, with the aim to support cities in somehow responding to global crises such climate and other important crises, to make sure that food systems are sustainable and resilient to this crisis. Sorry. Okay, this is probably with format. Okay. The main objectives of this initiative are to improve the well-being of city dwellers by improving air, malnutrition, and reducing malnutrition and quality of life in general, reducing food insecurity and malnutrition. Sorry. Developing a local economy through improving jobs, increasing resilience to climate shocks and disasters, and reducing a carbon footprint. So the question to be, sorry. One second. Yes. No.
So we'll wait for Guido to recover, drink water and just rest. It's been a long day for everybody. So what Guido was talking about was the Green City Initiative, which has been developed by FAO. And this is a very interesting, in terms of indicators, it connects to the MUFPP indicator framework. We've been also working on that. So I'll come back to that. But as you can see from the slide, it's bringing together urban food systems, urban forestry and green spaces, and urban and peri-urban agriculture. So trying to bring all of those three things together in a way that cities can be much more joined up around environmental protection, ecosystem services, but also food systems for resilience. And they're quite sometimes in conflict with each other, those things. We all know about land protection. So this is trying to find a way to support better integration for cities on that. So I'm going to move on. Let me just take this. Guido would have said, I think, that it's very important, again, to remember that this connects with the SDGs, and of course these are really important for all cities. So the work has been done to show how this connects. I think it's very useful for cities to make use of. And coming back to why do we need more indicators from the Green City Network in addition to what we have in MUFPP, I'm going to cover that in a minute. Do we have the next set of slides? Thank you. Okay, so I'll just introduce myself. I have been working with RUAF, with FAO, and with the Milan Pact since 2016 to support the development of the monitoring framework. I also work on food in my own city in Bristol in the UK, and we are ourselves trying to think about how better to monitor our work. So it's a subject which is very close to my heart. I've also had the opportunity and the privilege to work with 3 people you see here on the stage, because we ran a pilot project in 2019 to look at how to implement the Milan Pact monitoring framework in the cities of Quito and Nairobi, and also Antananarivo. So just a question, why do we work with data and indicators when we're talking about urban food systems? We've been hearing so many challenges today from cities, lots and lots of shared issues, but also some fantastic solutions. But we know that we need to progress faster and fairer. We need to meet the needs of the most vulnerable groups. And to do that, we need to understand exactly what's going on. So it's using data to shine a light on some of the challenging issues we're facing and to help us decide what are the best interventions by really digging deeper. This is one of the reasons that we need to work with this monitoring framework. So following the pilot project in 2019, based on that, we developed a practical handbook and a resource pack. So any city that wants to start using the Milan Pact framework, monitoring framework, has additional resources now to help to see how to use it. This is all available online. It's been designed by cities. Here we have 2 out of 3 who've done particularly recent work on it. We have a simple 5-step process to work through when you're starting to use the monitoring framework. There's a clear, logical methodology that should be customized by every single city. These indicators, the 44 indicators that exist, are still fairly general. Every city should take a look at those, but then work out what's going to be best for them. And we know that we have this city-to-city learning through the MUFPP, and there are these online resources. So trying to make it as simple as possible for every city to start monitoring, if you're not already. This slide, just to show, so under the category of social and economic equity, there are these 7 indicators suggested, which relate to jobs, decent jobs, community assets, policies around social and economic equity, social inclusion, education and skills. And you can see a city might just work on one of these, but over time, working on several, you start to build up a picture of what might be going on in the food system around that particular category of work. I also wanted to talk about 2 other very useful resources. So one is the city-region food system methodology. This is thinking wider than just the city. So it's the city and the surrounding region and understanding what's happening to that wider city-region food system. So there is going to be an updated, a new toolkit coming soon online. And the recent work here has been to look at how we assess resilience capacities. So we've been talking a lot today and yesterday about resilience. How do we actually know how resilient we are? And anyway, what does it mean and who's resilient? Who should be, why are they not resilient? So this approach is still using the same logic, so you work from left to right. What is it that we want to achieve? What's the change we want to see in the future where we know we will have much improved resilience? And then what is it that we're probably going to need to measure? And then what types of indicators could we use to measure that? So this same simple methodology is there in these 2 different approaches, whether you're just looking at urban using the MUFPP or if you want to look at the wider city region. This slide I wanted to show because we can use indicators to also guide our research. Of course we can. We want to make a change, so clarify what our priority changes are, and then we decide, well, how are we going to measure that? But then what if we don't have the data? What if we can't measure that? Then we need to ask simple questions. What? So here, what risk-sensitive agriculture practices have already been used if we're trying to give farmers the knowledge to be more resilient in the future? What other practices are desirable? Which farmers are using them, are not using them? What knowledge do they have? What knowledge do they not have? How is knowledge being shared? So you can dig deep into these things. And this really is just a point that the monitoring framework has multiple purposes. You could use it to create a food strategy if you don't already have one, just to give you an idea how you could shape it. You could use it to develop your monitoring framework. Those things should happen in parallel. And then you can use it to really dig into areas that you know no one has really got data on, but using these simple questions to guide that. Research can, when it comes to urban food systems, can sometimes be worrying because it maybe is too expensive, but this is a simple way to start looking at that. I also wanted to highlight that, as already mentioned, the FAO's Green Cities Initiative, we've been developing some more indicators which still use the same logic, left to right, but are more focused on urban green spaces, urban forestry, and additional areas of urban and peri-urban agriculture from very much an environmental perspective. So those will be coming soon. I mentioned that there's this simple 5-step process. This is all written in the handbook. I've mentioned that working on monitoring can be done at the same time as developing a food policy and strategy. In fact, I think it should be. It's much easier to do it at the same time. All of this involves and really motivates stakeholders. It's a powerful process, so it can sometimes feel daunting, worrying to try to work with indicators and monitoring, but when it becomes a shared activity, it become very motivating for everybody to look at what's really happening. And then it helps us to identify more effective interventions, because you've shared brains. There's been more people around the table thinking together what could be done. So I just want to leave you with this slide. These are the 2 practical resources that are available. Sorry, this is one. This is the handbook plus the reports from the cities. So this is all really practical information. I thoroughly recommend it. It's easy to read. It's really good to see how cities have spent time looking at monitoring. So with that, I think we hand back to Guido and you introduce our speakers. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Joy, and sorry, I'm back again. So now I would like to get into more the content of the experience of Nairobi and Quito. And I would like to start with Winfred Katumo, that will present a bit the experience from an institutional point of view of Nairobi. And then we'll pass through Sam Ikwa, that will look at the experience from an NGO, from a grassroots organization, and then from Quito, from the institution from Quito. So Winfred, I'll leave you the floor. Please go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Winfred Katumo from Nairobi City, Kenya. Where are my slides?
Do we have the first of the Nairobi slides, please?
Yes, please. Oh.
Okay. We are talking about working with the indicators of Milan. As I said, I'm Winfred Katumo. I'm the MAP desk officer in Nairobi, Kenya. Next. Let me go on here. We chose an indicator on governance, and that is the food system strategy, which our deputy governor has been talking about. And this is to ensure that we have an environment which is good and effective for action. And the outcome of that indicator is that the urban food policies, the legislations, the strategies, to make sure that they are integrated in whatever we are doing. And the key issues which we are really assessing when we are talking about our food system strategy, we want to increase food production in Nairobi. We also want to have a stable supply and income from the foods in Nairobi. We are also looking at reducing food losses. There's a lot of food which goes into waste. I think about between 30 to 40% of the foods which get into the markets, especially in the urban centers, they go into wastes. So we want to reduce these losses. And we are also looking at the improving of the good welfare of food consumers in the city. Those are the 4 strategic objectives of the food system strategy of Nairobi. We are already implementing the strategy. It was approved in April this year. And the strategy, we are going to implement it for 5 years. And after the 5 years, we will conduct a survey because already we have a baseline of where we are. We will conduct a study to see how far we have implemented it and what changes are there in the food system. In the food system, we have the Food Liaison Advisory Group, which is created by the strategy, and it's going to help in assessing the food systems issues in Nairobi. So again, that one we shall get report from it. We also have a food board in the strategy and a joint committees, that is inter-county committees and inter-county and government committees, which are formed by the strategy. When we will be assessing the achievements of the strategy, we will rely on our annual reports. We'll also rely on other departments' reports. We'll also rely on the reports of the other partners and also the Food Liaison Advisory Group members' reports. The monitoring process of the strategy is that, again, we will rely on our reports, other sectors. And in the city, we have a city map steering committee. Again, this is very important. They shall be giving us reports on how far we are with the implementation of the strategy. We have partners who are working in the city in food system issues. That is FAO. They are doing a lot of work with us. We have GAIN, and we also have Mazingira Institute, who are supported by RUAF, also on the food system issues, system issues in the city. We are also collaborating with the national government in implementing the food system issues in the city. Why we chose this indicator for this purpose is that we were involved, just like Joy and the colleague said, we were involved in the monitoring in 2019 during the pilot project. And why we chose it is because we wanted to see, because that time we were initiating, we were just developing. That time when we were reporting in 2019, we were collecting data of developing the strategy. But now the strategy is completed and we are implementing together with the stakeholders. We have worked with the stakeholders the whole journey from development, and even this time now we are implementing. There are significant changes when we look at 2019 and now. I'm saying that we have already completed and we are implementing. The document is guiding on issues of Nairobi food system and including the waste management. And again, we are saying we have involved stakeholders all the way. This is part of the strategy implementation photos. The first one, you can see some potted crops there. And there we are saying that the city doesn't have enough land, but that is the horizontal land. When it comes to vertical, you can go as high as you want when you are producing the crops. The second photo, it's about hydroponic farming, which we have introduced in schools and community farms. You can see children there planting trees. This is the issue of environment. And there's a group there, the deputy governor talked about, the Korogosho Market Youth Group, which is doing a lot. Again, this is a project under FAO, the Green Cities Initiatives. They are turning the wastes in the market into waste, into composting. They are composting. They are also turning the overripe avocados into soap. They are also using vermiculture in accelerating the decomposition of the organic wastes in the market. This market produces about 3,000 tons in a day, and when this waste is turned into something useful where the youths are able to get some income from it, then you find the IPs are not so much from the waste. Again, you can see due to climate change, we are able to promote on fodder preservation for use during the drought. You can see that those are some of the demonstrations we carry out. And because, again, of lack of space, we would also want to promote fish farming in the city. And we are using the fish tanks to produce fish from those tanks. And this is a school where we have installed those tanks. And when they harvest the fish, they are able to supplement their diets in the schools. A part in short is that this is a good initiative of having the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact indicators monitoring handbook, because this one is helping us to track implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as helping us to implement other city plans. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Winfred, very insightful. Sam, now it's your turn.
Thank you very much. My name is Samuel Ikua from Mazingira Institute based in Nairobi, Kenya. And I'm speaking here as a member of the civil society. And first, to start with, I would like to say Nairobi is one of the leading cities globally, if not the best, in terms of policy and practice in urban agriculture. In terms of policy, it has an Urban Agriculture Act that not only promotes urban agriculture, but also regulates it for public health and the environment. So looking at both dimensions of urban agriculture. Also another policy, it has a food system strategy that is guiding the city implementation in terms of food with the next 5 years. In terms of the practice pillar, it has over 200 staff in the agriculture department, not to mention the departments within crops, livestock, veterinary services, and also the food systems directorate, and also the institutional mechanism on involving the civil society through the multi-stakeholder platform. So can we clap for Nairobi? Thank you very much. So I'm going to start with my presentation on how we have worked closely with the city government of Nairobi on piloting the MUFPP indicators. And for us, we selected the indicator on recycling urban organic waste for food production. And why did we select this indicator? Cities have high population, and thus major cities produce about 2,000 tons of waste every day. About 80% of this waste is dumped in open landfills, dump sites, and about 60% of the waste deposited in the landfills is organic waste. So why should we have organic waste lying around while it can be reused in urban agriculture and also contribute to agroecological food production? So the key issue that we wanted in this indicator was to strengthen urban-rural linkages through organic waste management and having it reused in food production, and also to have this thing contributing to climate resilience, to clean environment. And organic waste is not just the compost, we are also using manure to, in terms of circular economy, to plant crops. And that contributes to climate mitigation by, manure has methane, which is one of the major greenhouse gas emissions causing global warming by trapping heat in the atmosphere. So when you use this manure to plant crops, you are contributing to climate change mitigation. So that is why we applied this indicator. And the other reason that we applied this indicator, we have two main ones. I have mentioned the one on climate resilience, and the other one that this indicator also stretches not only on climate resilience, but also on economies of food production. What do I mean by this? If a farmer has manure within their compound, they can use it as an input to produce crops. They don't have to go to buy fertilizer at the shops. So this saves the farmer costs of inputs. And this means that the consumer will not only have healthy food, but will also have affordable food, which is particularly important for our urban population with the low income. So this indicator stretches beyond climate resilience and also covers economies of food production, delivering both healthy food in terms of agroecology production and also on affordable food. And we selected these indicators through what we had a cross-sectoral consultative group. What do I mean by cross-sectoral? We had officials from the Nairobi Public Health Department, from the Department of Water, Land, and also Education, Social Services in schools, because agriculture is more than about the agriculture department. It also stretches to other departments of land and water, so that brings the need of having this broader perspective and bringing on board all key actors. And Mazingira Institute, as you can see on the bigger photo on the side with the many people, we did a meeting to have climate and change and gender indicators, sensitization, to get to talk to the farmers on what they are doing and how they can improve. When you are doing this indicator, it is good to take a step further and apply a gender lens, because the impacts are not similar. In terms of gender, you find that women are more affected. You all know that it is the primary responsibility in most African homes for women to provide food for the families. So due to climate change, when it does not rain, how will this woman produce food? What will be the impact on the woman and the household? So it is important to get to, for these women, the larger majority who offer most labor in food production, to get to know about climate change indicators. How are we monitoring who is involved? For monitoring, we have our network of urban and peri-urban food system actors in Nairobi, who include farmers, who include agricultural extension officers from Nairobi City County Government, and also who include consumers, and most importantly, food waste managers. And this approach is good because it's a bottom-up approach. We are working with the most affected, that is the farmers, and also the most interested people in terms of climate change mitigation, that is the farmers. So we work bottom-up approach, working with farmers through our network of urban and peri-urban farmers. On the one hand, you can see those are our officers in the markets, and on the other hand, We have the one in green t-shirt, is an agricultural extension officer from Nairobi City County, talking to farmers about composting and the need of using organic matter in food production. So that is it from the civil society part from Nairobi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. It was really interesting to see how the framework can really help designing and implementing very concrete actions on the ground. Now, Alexandra, we would like to hear from Quito.
Buenas tardes, buenas noches.
Good afternoon or good evening. Thank you for the invitation. Greetings from Quito. Well, we took part together with RUEF, FAO, and the MILAMPACT in the project for selection of indicators. First of all, the long list and the short list, and then we were part of the project for the implementation of the monitoring framework for the MILAMPACT. I would like to tell you that Quito has a multi-stakeholder platform which has driven the agro-food business in Quito, which covers 24 of the 37 indicators of the MILAMPACT in accordance with our context. And it is based on that, the indicator we chose to develop in this session is number 14, the number of activities implemented in the city to promote the adoption of sustainable diets. That is the axis sustainable diets and nutrition. And what we expect from this indicator is that food, nutrition, diet, marketing, education, the environment, and all policies related to local production can be aligned towards sustainable diets with the acknowledgement and inclusion of activities that are also including external stakeholders. What we try to measure is the number of activities and the number of people that participate in activities related to sustainable diets. And for that, we use a series of tools. This action has been ongoing since 2019. We started by establishing the baseline on the number of actions and players that are participating. The interesting part of this indicator is that based on its versatility and flexibility, they can be adapted to the city. It was important for us to integrate also actions coming from the cooperation agencies, civil society, the academia, everything that complements positively the city actions and that could be integrated under the same umbrella. Data have been collected from private, public sources, universities, and all different actors that we have mentioned. This is what matters. We want to find out what's going on in the city from multiple points of view. Why have we selected this indicator? Well, the indicator is selected by the Agricultural and Food Pact of Quito. We believe this indicator is wide enough to integrate aspects related to the climate and social inclusion. As part of the focus, food. And this is not very common. Climate justice and food security are seen separately, but we thought it would be interesting to integrate both under the same indicator. On the other hand, it allows us to improve connections between sustainable production and responsible production. And we wanted to build a local concept in terms of what is sustainable diet in the context of Quito. How are we integrating criteria that provide value to this concept? Can we go beyond the meaning of producing locally or eating fresh produce? What about agroecology? What about fair processes with human being and nature being diverse, considering the crop season, thinking about our city and our country that may produce products throughout the year? How can we ensure food sovereignty and food security? How can we exercise that? Providing the right to food from the city. And this indicator allows the generation of analysis and understanding of the problem from different points of view, because we're integrating several actors, and it provides value to the implementation of our food policy locally. In addition to that, it allows us to have a rationale that will guide us towards other indicators, integrating the sustainable diet concept from the point of view of other initiatives promoted by the municipality itself, which was not understood in the past. What have we achieved from this monitoring? Well, it is monitored once a year, as I said. The baseline has been established at 2019, and every year more actions are being integrated for the analysis. The mapping of actors was the baseline. We divided ourselves in categories: private players, public players in different levels of government, the university, civil society, the cooperation organisms, and trade, very much related to food. Free markets, street markets, restaurants, we don't want to find out what they are doing. Lack of information might be primary, secondary. The analysis may be qualitative or quantitative. And the data obtained will allow us to analyze the number of activities and the number of people that are taking part in these activities. Very briefly, the results we achieved as a city. It allows us to identify the ecological street fairs and markets, agroecological fairs, organic small markets. It transforms production in the urban area. And what about the rural area of Quito? It goes on through 5 chains of ecology. How many initiatives were promoted using and encouraging a sustainable diet from the point of view of different projects related to the environment, education, productive development? What about the food guideline in Ecuador? How many species can be produced? How many fresh produce can be planted? And what about responsible consumption? So this is the experience we have from the city of Quito. Thank you so much, Alexandra.
The experience of Quito is always an example for many other cities. I have a few questions I would like to ask this initial panelists. And maybe I will start with Winfred. I think Alexandra clearly mentioned that the monitoring framework has allowed to achieve some important results in the city. I wanted to ask some more details about what happened in Nairobi, whether the monitoring process has enabled to somehow raise awareness at national level on the situation of Nairobi in terms of food security, for example.
Yes, the monitoring of the indicators has really helped us as a city to be able to monitor the food system in Nairobi. Like the strategy I've talked about, we realized we had a food system in Nairobi which is not documented. And therefore, when we started the journey of developing the strategy in 2018, we have seen a difference, because when we were involved in that monitoring a bit, it really opened our eyes. And that is the time when we learned the concept of the food systems. And it has helped us to monitor the issues of the food systems, that is from production to consumption. So every node, that is production, the distribution, the processing, the consumption, and we have been able to walk the journey, and we have been able to identify the gaps in the food system. So this monitoring has really helped us as a city to be able to know where are those gaps. And again, we have been able to identify the stakeholders, the collaborators, the partners who are there ready to help us in fixing these challenges. And I forgot to say that when we began the journey, we were supported 90% by FAO in development of the food system strategy. Again, C40 was there. They made us walk the journey together and even understand the issues of food system in Nairobi. That one was not there before the monitoring, so it has brought a lot of change.
Thank you so much, Winfred. Sam, I would like to ask you about the challenges that you have been facing in the monitoring process, and how did you overcome them?
Yes, thank you very much. So in terms of monitoring, first you have to be organized for the farmers, because civil society is the linkage between the government and the farmers on the ground. So if you find the farmers are not organized, they do not know what is being monitored, that presents a challenge. And that's how Mazingira brought in the concept of self-organization of the farmers through our network of urban farmers. And before we even do the monitoring, we sensitize them on what we'll be monitoring them on. That's why you can see we have been holding regular meetings on these thematic areas. We have climate change indicators, we have gender indicators in relation to the MUFPP. So you sensitize them on what they will be doing, and then after they know what they should be doing and organized, then you can do your monitoring. Otherwise, if that is not done prior to the monitoring, then your efforts to monitoring will not be very helpful.
Thank you so much. Maybe I will ask the same to Alexandra.
Nosotros hemos tenido que
We had to face the fact that not all public institutions have data and information that is up to date. It is incomplete, it is not aggregated. The bureaucratic timelines are not right. So what we achieved at the level of the municipality and at the level of the food pattern and those that can contribute in building and designing indicators involves emphasizing systemic line of thinking to understand food systems and how the level of information is important to feed into the indicators that we have designed and that we committed to measure as city.
Well, another question regarding the use of data. No? So how do you use the data that you are collecting now, for example? Maybe it's open to all of you. I don't know who wants to answer. Sam?
As a civil society representative, I can come in on that. So the data that we collect through our monitoring, we take it to the government, that is the policymakers, to inform and shape their decisions in terms of implementation. Civil society is mostly the linkage between the people and the government. So whatever data we have, we go and sit down with the city county government and inform them, yes, we have monitored, this is working, we have monitored, this is not working, you need to improve. So that is the usage of data, and you find that when you have data, credible, strong data, the interventions that the government will design to implement, they will be relevant and appropriate, and they will serve the purpose. So in terms of getting the data and involving the people right from the ground, so that the policies that are designed really reflect what is on the ground. So the resources put forward in implementing policies do not go side by side, and they get to target that particular intervention because there is credible data showing that that need needs to be met.
Thank you.
Thank you. The data we collect, it helps us as a city when we are planning. This is when we are planning, like budgeting, we are able to, once we identify those gaps, you really want now to prioritize, because you might find there are so many gaps. So yours is now to prioritize and say now, because we have 1, 2, 3, can we implement like for 2 or 3 years trying to fix those gaps? Then number 2, the data has also helped us in coming up with the implementation framework, especially for the food system strategy. And there we have listed what we want to do, because we have already collected data, we know what is to be fixed, and that one is now like a shopping basket for us. When we get partners, they are able to come and fix themselves in the implementation framework. Number 3, we have also realized we need to monitor the food system strategy, and now we are coming up with the M&D framework. That is monitoring and evaluation plan, which again, Mazingira Institute, they are offering with RUAF to support us so that we can come up with that M&D plan, which will again enable us to assess progress of implementation.
Thank you so much, Alexandra.
Sí, a nosotros nos ha permitido integrar la alimentación en varios espacios que no pensábamos.
In many areas that we didn't believe we could implement it, positive or negative, it allowed us to reflect on the problem and the needs for investment and attention to a specific area, as well as understand the interconnections that demand the attention for that specific aspect that you're measuring.
Which is quite crucial to initiate the monitoring process, and also related to the funding. So how is, for instance, how is it funded in your cities, this process, and what do you think is the best way to support this kind of exercise?
I can start. The funding bit is, as I said, you know what you want to do, what you want to fix. That one, first of all, now gives you room now to prioritize what you want to do. And because you cannot do everything in 1 year, in 2 years, once you prioritize, you give now yourself some time to implement so that you can see the change which you are desiring to achieve. Thank you.
Yes, I'll also mention as a civil society person, in terms of funding, food is a baby for all of us. It's a baby for the government, it's a baby for the civil society and the development partners. And that's how we call for cooperation, for them to join hands together with us and support us with funds so we can be able to coordinate with the county government. And that's one of the areas we collaborate with other partners like RUAF and other global bodies like CGIAR, and that's how we get some of the resources to implement monitoring.
Before we go to Alexandra, as I said, we have the monitoring framework. There we have fixed what is to be done, what is the budget. And currently, as the deputy mayor or the governor said, this is a new government and we are developing the county integrated development plan. And that is now where we put all what we want to do for the next 5 years. To implement this county integrated development plan, which now we are developing, it is going to be launched in January next year. Implementing this document, we do it every year with annual development plan. Again, that one now you pick what you want to do from the CIDP, you put it in the annual development plan, and then you make sure you put it in the budget. As I said, this is our shopping basket. When we get partners who would want to do something, again, we refer them to the strategy where we have the implementation framework. They pick, and that is how we collaborate to see that things are moving well.
En nuestro caso, el fondo principalmente ha sido el fondo municipal que se asigna al proyecto de agricultura urbana del.
In our case, we extract a percentage to maintain Quito's food pact active, and also other funds from cooperation partners. But we believe that the strategy is the commitment and co-responsibility of different players to raise information and contribute and deliver this information for a single analysis. We have achieved that many other indicators be presented by the entities themselves, because they are competent in measuring them in terms of environment and health, and so they can include them in their own plans, that it be something that can be continuously measured, and that we may be able to bring together and have an annual idea of how the city is coming along.
Close the initial part of this session. I'll give the floor to Joy to call on the stage the other speakers, the other panelists. Please take the other entrance. Yes, sorry.
So we're not asking you to go anywhere. You stay here. We've just had effectively quite an in-depth discussion with 2 cities about monitoring, and now we'd like to invite another 4 cities who are new to us in terms of the indicators discussions, but we would like to have a further discussion with some other cities and hear from them what they are doing. So please can I invite onto the stage Helle Visbøl from city of Kolding in Kolding, did I say right, in Denmark. Welcome. Olivia Bertolini Monteiro from Porto Alegre. Welcome, Olivia. David Messer from city of Guelph in Canada. Welcome. And Mayor Dr. Roger Mbassandine from the city of Douala in Cameroon. Please. So, we've been less generous with the next group of invitees, so we're only going to give them the opportunity to do a very short summary. Welcome, Mr. Mayor, please. So we're going to just hear from each city a short summary on what you are monitoring, or where you are so far in the process of preparing to monitor, or maybe it's a particular project you're working on, and why you're monitoring this. What's motivating you to do that? So, Helle, can I start with you?
You sure can.
And we have some slides, please.
Yeah, maybe
that one. Thank you. So thank you for the opportunity to come in here and sharing the Kolding approach to working with indicators. My name is Helle Vilsbøl, and not only do I represent the city of Kolding, which is one of the new kids on the block, so to say, in this partnership, and working with the MUFPP, but also with the Facility project, where we are now a little bit more than a year into the project. So the whole starting point for Kolding is almost, you could say, a ground zero. The city of Kolding has about 90,000 inhabitants, so I don't know if you would all call it a city, but in Denmark, it is actually the 7th largest city. And what is really a great opportunity is that it holds about 70% of it is agricultural land, but only 10% of that is actually used for food cultivation. So that's a bit of a starting point. And I really like to see your opening also in terms of the process, Joy, because I think that's really the starting point for us. Talking about indicators and where we want to go is really difficult before understanding the food system. And working with the food system approach is just a new paradigm for us almost. As I mentioned before, we've not really been leveraging this and thinking this way. So the very first step for us has been to understand what is the food system of culling. Who are the stakeholders? What are we good at? What are we not so good at? So going through all the different, or basically the whole value chain, really mapping out who are the different players here and what are we good at. It also means that we do not have a food policy, we do not have a food council, we do not have a food strategy yet, but these are some of the things that we are obliged to do as part of the facility process. So before we can even move ahead, now understanding the food system is really what we spend the first year on. And also the bigger picture, what are the strategic focus points of culling and trying to match that. So the next thing for us has been to say, okay, we actually have 37 innovative actions that have been allocated towards culling as part of the facility project, and you could times that by 3, I think, in terms of indicators. But before we get to the indicators, again, we need the bigger picture. What are some of those key objectives that are important to culling? And that is our carbon footprint, food waste, but also health measures. So we really need to start first, and that's our approach to build the baseline on where are we on these parameters and measures. So reducing carbon footprint, we're really fortunate now that we have an organization who has built a whole database with all the food in there, all food items with a CO2 footprint. So a fantastic starting point to be able to understand what is the individual carbon footprint of food. And you might all be pleased to see that the beer is actually low the rank, so it doesn't have so big a CO2 footprint, but I'm sure you know that. It's not so much diving into the individual food items, but what this allows us to do is that now we can pull data from the vendors when the canteens has been purchasing to see what's actually the CO2 footprint of what we are buying within the municipality. So again, this is part of the starting point and building up a baseline of where are we today. So when we are now implementing a lot of different actions, we can go back, having worked with food waste, having worked with plant-based dietary, have we actually moved the CO2 footprint? The same goes for food waste. Again, we come from ground zero. We have to build all the data up. Here we could dream of the Tesla version, but we have to start simple to motivate our stakeholders. So we actually bought a scale, and now we have an app developed so they once a day weigh the food waste and put it into the database or a simple app. Yes, it's simple, but that's where we have to start, and then we advance from there. So we slowly sneak it in, we start talking about it, we start getting some numbers. In terms of health, this is really interesting, also thinking and seeing the different indicators, because I think key measure for well-being or health for many years has been weight, and it's been a lot focused on weight. This is actually not the culling approach anymore. We have a lot more holistic approach to well-being now, and it's measured instead based on the WHO805 measures, which is a lot more holistic and qualitative as well. So when I talk about context, I think it's also important to understand what's actually the approach out in the different areas within the municipality and how we're measuring. So a little bit back to it, that's our starting point, and the next step will be for us to match this up with the actions and the indicators. Thank you.
Helle, thank you very much. Olivia, would you like to take the floor and tell us what you're doing in Porto Alegre?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, first of all. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity, also you and also the PACT team. I'm here today maybe to vou falar em português, para trazer uma reflexão que a gente está passando em Porto Alegre.
So I would just like to present what we're doing in Porto Alegre now and share with you just some food for thought, present some food for thought. If you see the screen, what's written is monitoring. It's hard to read, right? And that's what happens with monitoring. It's what happened with the needs that we have to raise data, identify, and may seem very hard to start off with. And a way to follow. And then we have this issue we've been working on in Porto Alegre, which is the creation of a network. And we often talk so much about this and we don't remember why. We forget to remember the basics. Why are we together? What are our collective goals, our common goals? And what's this objective? To establish the planning of effective actions, planning of the routine of delivering short, medium, long-term goals, a matter of understanding institutional environment where we find ourselves in to make our decisions. We have to consider that this environment really does exist so that the decision-making process is more assertive. I am talking a little bit about all this, but I try to open the word monitoring because when we start examining and establishing some steps, it becomes all more clear. So working in a network, it provides this complementarity, different areas that have to come together to achieve this objective, an effective food policy or monitoring. This is worth within the public space and also the private sector. They have to understand, according to their competence and their limitations always, how they can act and provide short to medium, long-term goals successfully. And my time is already up, but there's one important, the perception of benefits, because oftentimes working in a network is not altruistic. The perception of benefit is always whenever there is a small result, you have to communicate that and divulge that, because in one day I'm going to be successful. The other part will also be a benefit. This is just some food for thought, and then I will be free to talk to you more. I think this is a super important discussion. Thank you.
Monitoring, that's a good thing to take away. I think we should all have a copy and take a look in more time. David, please take the floor.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is David Messer. I'm from the city of Guelph. It's located about an hour outside of Toronto. We have a long history of being one of the major agriculture innovation hubs in North America. We joined the Milan Pact about a year ago at this point, but our work on building a circular food system really began in 2019. We competed for a grant from our federal government around this goal of 50-50-50. So 50% increase in access to affordable, nutritious food, starting 50 new circular businesses and collaborations, and a 50% increase in economic benefit where waste is turned into a resource. And I can say we're going to blow past all of these by the end of 2023. And back to the discussion on getting funding, a 50-50-50 structure like this is really great when you're trying to sell something to government. But then you have to go to the next phase about how do you actually measure that, and how do you go from a target to actually being able to defend what you're doing. So I think, like my friend from Denmark mentioned, the important thing at the start is establishing a baseline. So we spend about a year doing a deep study of our food environment. This is on our nutritious food side, where we looked at the ratio of healthy to unhealthy food retail and locations and walk times, as well as deep demographic information of the people who have experience of food insecurity in our communities. And then from there, we built monitors out from that, starting with the 10 priority communities. So we looked at communities where we know that there were disparities in terms of physical access to food, as well as where those demographic populations are that we know have greater instances of food insecurity. So all of our interventions aim to improve that physical access piece, which is binary and quite easy to monitor. But then on the lived experience and the actual improvement for individuals, that's where we have to work through collaborator organizations to do that. And I think our experience has been very much that the people who are experiencing food insecurity aren't necessarily wanting to give government details on their lives. There's shame, there's many new Canadians, and people who don't normally interact with the government. So in terms of observations just from our experience, I'd say trust building is absolutely essential and working through members on the ground in communities. This 50% target on food access also is only halfway. And I think the important thing there is it showed us what we're not doing and where the places where we should be developing new strategies and new programs. And I'll also say that that qualitative for us is just as important as the quantitative numbers. It's important to really understand people's experiences and why they're making decisions that they're making. And just my last slide is, this is one section of some of the indicators that we are tracking, but there's a wide number of other things that relate to social, economic, and environmental benefits of a circular food economy. Thanks.
Thank you very much, David. Mayor Mbassa, please can we welcome you and hear from you about what you're doing in the city of Douala, Cameroon.
Alors, je voulais vous parler de alimentaire durable. Douala, comme vous pouvez le constater, est une ville d'environ.
So, as you can see, we are thinking that we have 3.8 million inhabitants. It always looks like we have more, but anyway, we have a high rate of rain there, and the climate is equatorial. Our city is on the coast. It has a harbor. The port is the heart of the city. The city is a signatory of the Milan Pact, and its purpose is to develop resilient and sustainable food systems that ensure healthy food that will also preserve and the environment and allow for the implementation of the project. The main tool we use is a very ambitious project. It consists of trying to consume everything we consume in an area of 100 to 200 kilometers. That corresponds to 400 municipalities in 4 regions of Cameroon. It's around the circle you see there. This project may transform radically the state of things, but it also may allow us in Douala to develop. We'll be able to develop local production, local farmers, especially local small farmers, so they can have more easily access to markets. That is why we must consume everything we produce.
Thank you very much, Mayor Mbassa. Okay, we only have a short time left, and the next session is waiting because of all the delays. But I just wanted to ask you a few questions. I would like to ask each of you, please be quite short with your responses, what challenges have emerged from the work you've done, and that is like your next step to overcome that challenge? Like, so what's the next step? So, Hella, would you like to start with that?
I think
you need a microphone.
Oh, good, thank you. And I guess I don't need these either. In terms of challenge, I think embarking on a journey where it's building up a lot of knowledge for what is actually a food system. I would say the whole anchoring to the political system, getting them on board. One of the key notes I took on day one is this takes political will. But first I need to onboard them. I need for them to understand what this journey is about, what is a food system about, why is this such an important agenda. So I think that is one of the key barriers and challenges for calling as a starting point.
Great, thank you. Olivia?
Well, tem alguns desafios, assim. Acho que a primeira é a compreensão.
We have a few challenges. First of all, the idea that it's a long-term thing, so political will and so many other things, but it's to understand the challenge and to understand that it's a process to be followed. On the other hand, in a very tangible way, we've been talking about raising data and the difficulty of raising data in Porto Alegre and resources. So these are things that are important. And how complex monitoring is. This is another lesson learned.
Thanks, Olivia. David?
I'd follow on what was mentioned by Nairobi earlier about data and the challenge with data too. It's hard and it's expensive to gather. And especially if you're trying to get data that's getting below kind of high-level statistics, data that you can really see insights and really action on at a particular place and a location. And that's really hard to do. So it's something we're still working on with, but I think for us going through community partners is kind of the key to that, and really working place by place, instance by instance, and then building the data from there up, I think, rather than trying to be top down.
Thank you. Mayor Bassandina?
Oui, nous sommes dans un processus de transformation structurelle.
The structural transformation encompasses so many stakeholders, so we must build it with these players, with the different stakeholders, building a wide range of indicators to achieve the project we wish to achieve during the time that we are implementing all that. But it's a process, and as is the case in any process, it must be monitored. We must make an effort to be flexible during the process.
Question. What one piece of advice would all of you offer to other cities? Can I start with you, Mr. Mayor? What advice would you offer?
That's so difficult because we have different situations comparing one city to the next. What I would like to say is that when we find ourselves, we're in a process and we need to have a baseline of data monitoring that is effective and very, very close to reality so that it will enable us to drive the process with the flexibility, with a certain flexibility. So the baseline indicators must be pertinent, relevant, and flexible, and they must be used as tools for this.
Thank you. And the good news is that the Milan Pact indicators are all very flexible and should be customized. David, your advice?
I would say try and be inspirational and aspirational. So try and set goals and targets that bring people along, and that helps people give you that data and find those indicators. And if you go to people and say, we want to change the world, but first we need to figure out what the world looks like now, that's going to be more likely to get people to come in as opposed to saying we're doing a statistic experiment. So I think there's a lot to be said for branding and that sort of framing when it goes to the public and the business community and politicians.
Thank you. Olivia?
I believe it has to do with engagement. It is these minor deliverables that will mobilize and engage people and feed into the process. Sharing responsibilities, she said that, having civil society and other co-responsible agencies, and also share the benefits. This is what makes the will go round and the process advance based on tangible data, of course.
and I'm going to be mean to the next 4 of you. See if you can say it in like one sentence. What's your advice?
Okay. Be simple, get it implemented, and advance from there. In terms of getting data, I think that's one of my key learnings, motivating people, rather simple than overcomplicated.
Simple. Thank you.
That was one sentence.
That's great, thanks. Alexandra.
Selección, adapten.
Select, adapt, generate knowledge, and advocacy for food security and food policies.
Involve farmers in every step of policy making, all the way to implementation, monitoring, and review. So whatever the government is doing, it will be relevant to the specific needs and priorities of the farmers.
Winfried, you have the last word, advice. Short, brief.
Yes, involve stakeholders all the time in your activities, and let's continue interacting with the indicators. The more you interact with them, the more you'd want to implement more and more, and let us also participate in the best practice awards competition, because the more you interact with the indicators, the more you understand them, and by the time the calls are made, you are able to identify what you want and what you can write as a city. Thank you.
We have to pretty much close, so have you got just a few words, and then we'll give a really big round of applause to our speakers. Sure. Yeah, thanks.
So thank you very, very much, because I have also learned a lot of what is going on the ground. So really, thank you very much. A big round of applause for our pilot cities and new cities that are using the indicators. We hope that this session has been encouraging for other cities to adopt it. But also, big thanks. We are extremely grateful to RUAF and FAO that are developing this monitoring framework and are accompanying us in this journey. I believe that the monitoring framework is a fundamental tool for our community, because it is our common language somehow. And it is the most concrete way that we have to understand where do we stand in the implementation of the framework for action. So this is why this is the reason why in every edition of our Global Forum, we always have a dedicated session on indicators. And now that we would like to push forward also our work in the different regions, we really would like to have an indicator discussion also on the different regional fora. This is also the reason why this time, for the first time in this MPA edition, we have asked to every submitting cities whether they were using or not the monitoring framework. And now we know that 80 cities out of 250 are using the monitoring framework, or at least some of the indicators. So those are very encouraging results, and I hope that we can have even greater results. To conclude, can I ask you a show of hands on who feels more inspired about using the monitoring framework? Anyone? Some, yes, yes. And who feel more better informed about the monitoring framework as well? All right, so thank you very much, and we can conclude the session. Thank you.